He was a great tantric, one of the greatest of our time. And then he got a vision of Krishna. And then he stopped the sadhana, came back to himself, and he became a Christian. And did intense Christian Gnostic sadhana until he got a vision of Jesus. He wanted to prove that all these paths, it was possible to see and get divine realization through all of them. He even then became a Sufi after he got realization of Jesus and started practicing the Sufi path. So he wasn't content with just the name of God and chanting. He had to use every means and method. And so in some ways, this is a Kali Yuga Rashi. You're using all these methods and means, and you're not, like, the one way is not enough. You have to make sure, because you doubt the one way. So you test them all to make sure they all work. And so we can see the approach to the spiritual path through the sign opposite the A8. Now, I shouldn't say the spiritual path, I should say to spiritual experience. Because the spiritual path, as we said, is more connected to the mantrapada. But that actual realization, because you could be any of these, any religion and take a more direct path or take a very dense, physical attribute and outlook on it. So you see the difference between the actual religion and the spiritual practices that you do within that religion. So now the seventh from it also has to do with our spiritual family. Because the thing is, if you believe that you need to try all paths, you're going to most likely associate with other people who are trying multiple paths. If you believe that it's pretty simple and all you need to do is chant the name, then that's most likely who you're going to be hanging out with. Because, there's no reason to hang out with somebody who's doing all this kind of intense tantric sadhanas, and if all you're doing is chanting, you don't even need to carry anything except your mala. So generally we associate with people who are trying to get the spiritual experience similar to us. They become our real spiritual family. And when I began to compare some charts, I understood that that's what it relates, and I wanted to see it. I looked at Muktananda and his disciple Guru Mai, and they both have water signs opposite the Mrityupada. Who else do I have here? Ramakrishna and Vivekananda both have earth signs. So even Vivekananda, even though he had in some ways, a philosophically different approach, he was very Advaita. He wasn't going to try all the paths. He believed in this total non-dual. It was still, a lot of people talk about it. It was a very static approach. It wasn't a very Agni, just an open and one shot. It was a very systematic way of dealing with the information and things. And there's no way that's right or wrong, because this is showing how we approach spiritual experience, and it's how we as an individual will get that spiritual experience. So it's not saying that one is better than the other, but this is how a person is proceeding to get these spiritual experiences in their life. Okay. And now, all these spiritual experiences are going to be connected with the sun's transit, and it's going to be connected with the sun's transit through the Mrityupada. It's the houses trinal to it, the 7th and the 10th. And relative, it's going to be related, as we just explained, those different houses and the experiences associated with those different houses. It's going to be, those different experiences are going to be activated with the sun's transit through those particular houses, trines, 7th and 10th. Okay, every Aruda is protected from the 9th house from it. In general, the 9th house is always going to protect whatever, the 9th house from anything will protect it. And if you think about it, the 9th house represents the father. It also represents Dharma. And if it's the 9th house from it, it's always going to, it's taking care of you like a father. It cares about you, and so it's going to treat you like a father. And so whatever planets are there, and Jaimini says, even if upagrahas are there, even if upagrahas are there, the upagraha will protect you because it feels like you're its child. It's like a father to you. So a father, the definition, according to the scriptures, is of a father is he who provides protection to the child. That's the definition of a father. So that planet in the ninth house, it's providing you protection. It's acting like the Father. So things in the ninth house from any Aruda or from any Bhava will protect that Bhava or that Aruda. Now, with the A8, what happens is, during these spiritual experiences, when Kundalini comes up, it needs to generally purify the channels. It needs to get rid of things that we've been holding on to. And so a lot of times it can bring, like the churning of the ocean, the first thing, before the Amrita, the nectar came out, the poison came out. So a lot of times when we begin the spiritual path and we start trying to get spiritual experience, maybe we might have a little good spiritual experience and that triggers us to stay on the path. But then if we really start working it, a lot of times a lot of issues start coming up. And more poison comes up than actually good things. And so this is called the halaha in the churning of the ocean. And it was Shiva that took and drank this poison to save the devotee while they're on the spiritual path. And so the protection when these things come up, when the Mrityupada is causing these problems to come up, when the spiritual experience is becoming very negative, we go to the ninth house from the Mrityupada. Now, you're going to have to take that into consideration with the Ishtadevata and the other devatas calculated from the Atmakaraka and see which one is going to be most beneficial. But remember the protection of the ninth house from the Mrityupada during a spiritual experience. Now, right here, this is a parampara teaching. Jaimini says that even upagrahas in the ninth house will protect you. Now, this is the parampara teaching. So we see a planet in the ninth house. How do we know what form to worship that ninth house planet in? When we're talking about Arudas, we start talking about the goddess, because the Arudas relate to the moon. So we talk about the Devi when we come to the Aruda. So it's the Devi associated with the ninth house that's going to give us protection. Now, we have, if tamas grahas are in that house, it's called Nila Shaktis. This is the word that Parashara uses, is Nila Shaktis. They're also called Mahavidyas. So it's the Mahavidya form of the planet in the ninth house that's going to protect us. If it's a sattvic or rajasic planet, we're going to use Shri Shakti. We're going to use Durga, or one of the 9 forms of Durga. The 9 forms of Durga relate to the 9 planets. So in this way, we are going to pick that right form of the mother to protect us at that time.
So do we have a list of the Mahavidyas?
In Vedic remedies, all this is given, yeah. But it often doesn't tell you exactly when to use it, so.
So now we know when to use it. Now we just
This is one of the 500 ways that it can be used.
Right.
But this is parampara teaching here.
Yeah.
So this is, you won't find how to use this in books.
And retrograde or direct doesn't matter. If it's a
Not
planet.
the big. This is the beginning.
Okay.
To really do to understand the devata of a house, it's like learning medical jyotish. It's really, there's so many different forms, and whether the form is wearing red or white or black or blue, it's all going to change depending on multiple factors. But if you use this will generally protect somebody who's having a bad spiritual experience. This is going to help them.
So we're transferring this over a little bit. When you're saying bad spiritual experience, if somebody were having what you would call maybe a spiritual emergence, like schizophrenic or psychotic break or something,
Exactly.
could